just put on screen the assignment number 2. Did you all see the assignment number 2 on the classroom?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are you all excited to do it? Yes or no?
Of course.
Very good. This assignment, let me explain. I'll take about 10 minutes to explain. You know, the government raises funds to meet its own expenses. Recurrent expenditure like salaries of the government employees, maintaining health services, education services, and general infrastructure, and also maintain the parliament and the provincial councils and various other government entities. At the same time, they also borrow for money for development work like construction of highways and various other projects. And in the recent past, government resorted to borrow money from overseas entities. Until 2009 or 10, Sri Lanka was a lower middle income country and then was entitled to various concessionary loans from IMF and World Bank. And they were, the interest rates were like 1%, 2%, and also a long period of time, 25 years, 30 years, 40-year repayment period. So annual debt repayment was very low. But since 2009 and 10, Sri Lanka became a middle income country. So with that, the concessionary loan entitlement from the supranational organizations were removed. So therefore, Sri Lankan government had to borrow money on commercial rates. And as at present, as explained in the topic, as at present, the foreign currency loans obtained is total outstanding is something about $23.2 billion. And they are at commercial rates. And to repay the capital plus interest, Sri Lanka government has to find about $4 billion, in excess of $4 billion annually to repay the foreign debt. On top of that, as we discussed before, Sri Lanka imports a lot and exports a tiny amount, and therefore the trade deficit, the expenses for imports over earnings from exports is 1.8 billion. So estimated annual outflow of cash for foreign sources is 5.8 billion. In terms of Sri Lanka rupee at the current rate is about 1,160 billion rupees. So now, after the present government came to power, they have decided to refrain from borrowing from overseas foreign loans and then to resort to local sources of funds. And that creates borrowing for local sources of funds, meaning tax revenue, taxpayers' money, tax revenue, plus the fund generated through treasury bills and treasury bonds. Treasury bills and treasury bonds, the subject that Mr. Karunatha is explaining to you now. So, from now onwards, we expect the treasury bills, primary market, and the secondary market activities to increase exponentially because government will borrow more money from local sources and already stopped borrowing from overseas parties. So there is ample opportunities to create and develop local market. local market for treasury bills and treasury bonds. So this is the background. And as authorized money brokers in your community, present activities involve dollar-rupee or foreign exchange dealing for buyers and sellers, plus the treasury bill, treasury bonds, and the related fixed income securities. And for some money brokers, the income is about 50% on forex fees, and then about 50% from the fixed income securities. And for some, it is about 60 or 70% from the treasury bills and bond income, and about 40% from the dollar-rupee deals. And if I can go back to about 2 decades, when I was in the treasury dealing rooms, it is almost the same kind of products and activities that you all do. So for 2 decades, nothing has changed. But of course, the technology has changed. The way the screens and communication methods have changed, and there are a lot of opportunities for development. In other words, a lot of opportunities for the authorized money brokers to enhance your fee income, brokerage income, through creation of new products, new activities, and thinking of new ways of handling things. So our request is, me and Mr. Karunaratne, our request is for you all to put down to paper the way that you would think that in the light of the increased treasury bills, primary market activities and secondary market activities, what would you propose to increase your brokerage, to increase your fee-based income, and with a mindset to improve the overall economy, overall financial market, making Colombo as a financial hub, and assisting or supporting the bank dealers and primary dealers and then various other communities, and also general public, the end user. There are many who want to invest in treasury bills and treasury bonds and earn a high income. So, in short, I'm requesting you to write about 2,000 words, plus or minus 10%, and other categories are the same, other requirements are the same, Word document font size 12. And I'm suggesting the paragraph, like in the first assignment, acknowledgement, executive summary, introduction, something like this, what we explained here, the need to develop the financial markets. Then this market, what do you have now? Treasury bill market, 90 days, 91 days, 192 days, 364 days, plus treasury bond market, 2 years up to whatever the period that you have now. And the volumes, you can find the volumes from the Central Bank website. And next paragraph, focus on authorized money brokers. What do you do now? What amount of market share? Because the existence of Bloomberg and Reuters or other direct communications, I'm sure many bankers and many primary dealers may go in direct. Money brokers might see only 50% of the trade volumes. And the composition of your fee-based income for each money broking house. And then also, in the light of the above, your new proposals. New proposals, I'll explain to you in a while. New proposal and value addition that you can make to support the economy and support the money brokers' income, and the support that you can give to develop Colombo as a financial hub, and to the contribution that you can make to the GDP, gross domestic product, and to the services that you can offer to the general public, masses. Facilitating price discovery, you know what is price discovery by now, we have discussed at length, and contribution to the economy, conclusion, list of references, and so on. So let me come back to the component of new proposal. I'll give you a couple of new proposals. You can think of that line, but you must come with your own amended or your own created proposals. One proposal that I can suggest is create more products. As it is, we have, as Mr. Karunath explained, plain vanilla treasury bills, plain vanilla treasury bonds, and the only derivative that we have seen is the repo and reverse repo market. But remember when we discussed the money market module a few weeks ago, I discussed with you bundling of these securities and trading it, creating a new product and creating new options, financial options on them, and creating financial futures on them. Remember that I discussed with you about the bank accepted bills in Australia. We have trade bills, but between the buyer and the seller, where buyers accepted that I bought a certain amount of goods from a producer, and the producer taking them to the bank and the bank accepting them, bank accepted bills. And in Australia, the bank accepted bills have been traded in bundle form. Say 100,000 Australian dollars bank accepted bill for 3 months. So now we have a better platform here. Treasury bills and bonds are the total liability of the government of Sri Lanka. One source who have to repay the government debt on maturity. So bundling treasury bill 3 months once, 6 months once, 1 year once, when even the treasury bonds, 10-year bonds, halfway through they become 5-year bonds. You can start bundling them and then trading in the some facility to trade those bundles in terms of 10 million rupees, 100 million rupees, 1 billion rupee bundles, and so on. That's one suggestion. And then also you can create an exchange to trade those bills and bonds, securitized bundles, and so on. You will create a separate yield curve for that. Then third proposal, now money brokers are with a minimal of 10 million capital, and then there are primary dealers with 1 billion capital are allowed to run their own portfolio of treasury bills and bonds and to market them to the general public wherever they find an investor. So why not ask permission from the regulators like Central Bank, SEC, and other authorities, where the money brokers are also to be given a little bit of a higher scope. Let the money brokers run a treasury bill and bond portfolio on their own, trade on their own account. I'm sure you will add more bids, more offers to the market. And being exposed to all 24 licensed commercial banks and sometimes licensed specialized banks, 6 of them, and also primary dealers, you will see a better market. You will have a very narrow spread of bid and offer. And I'm sure as money brokers, if you're authorized to run your own portfolio or treasury bills and bonds, you can also create another network of finding end user, retail investors, tap the major funds and sell your treasury bills bonds on secondary market. So try thinking a little bit out of the box. You will not only create a good liquidity base. Whenever someone wants to get a treasury bill, sell a treasury bill, your bids and offers will contribute to the market, and then you will be enhancing the support to the market. Thereby, derivative markets can come up. Various other securitized products can come up. So it's a matter of creating the new market. Thus, you are paving the way for Colombo to become a market like Mumbai, market like Kuala Lumpur. Finally, you can become a market like Singapore or Hong Kong. So create some new proposals. Finally, the final proposal that I have listed is one proposal that I am even sent to the government of Sri Lanka, where to create a state debt procurement office, an independent office, something like Public Debt Department of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, who manages treasury bonds, to pull it out from the central bank and create a semi-government state debt procurement office who are vested with the responsibility of issuing the government securities for various development projects. Say, for example, Central Highway to Kandy, Northern Highway to Jaffna, or another electrically powered railway system, or another urban railway system, underground or overground. So when such development proposals come up, this state debt procurement office can estimate the cost and issue new papers, bills or bonds, and source the money and give it to them, and then allocate a dedicated repayment program. And one of the main ideas is to get this financing machinery out of the clout of the politicians who have been squandering some commission income, so that you can make it a little transparent. And whatever the money that is being raised, on the clean form goes to the development project, and the state debt procurement office on maturity of those treasury bills and bonds can reissue them and create a market. The 2-3 main benefits are that the state debt procurement office will create a playground for all treasury personnel, including money brokers, for better employment opportunities, to develop their skills, to improve their qualifications, and then give their best to the economy. And finally, to achieve the economic development in double-digit form, like we have seen in Singapore and various other countries, developing their financial markets. So I just indicated about 4 or 5 proposals, new proposals. So let's see what you can propose. Let's see what you can propose. So I guess you understood what I meant. So any clarification needed? Do you need any clarification, or can you understand? Any questions?
No, sir.
You understood. Thank you, Praveen. Yes, Gabriel, understood?
Yes, sir.
Kasaba? Yeah, Mahil, how did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Let's see, simple thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Niluk, how are you? Did you understand?
I understood what's expected, sir. The topic seems a bit tough.
Don't worry, because it is between ourselves for the moment. But later on, let's see if the money broking houses wants to list down the proposals and then look at it afresh to give it a good take it forward and then discuss with the authorities. For the moment, it's only for your exam qualification purposes, where you earn only 50% of the marks.
Noted, sir.
Very good, very good. So I have suggested the submission date as 1st of June. That's adequate, no? First of June? I think it's adequate. All right. Okay, right. All right. All right. Thank you very much. Then Mangala, it's over to you, Mangala, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ratnayaka. I'll start now. So we were talking about bond pricing yesterday, and for the benefit of all, and as we need to, we need to make everyone understand this area. This is a very interesting and important area. I will go through these slides again. And try to explain you again the concept and the calculation. Only thing I would like to know the feedback. If I can have the feedback immediately, it will be much easier for me to get into the required level of speed and required level of understanding, right? So now we actually about 2 days ago or even yesterday I was I presented this to you and explained this present value formula. I will start from here and first I will explain you this formula. Now this formula is used to calculate a present value of a future cash flow, right? Present value of a future cash flow. Now when you have a future cash flow, we need to know if an asset is especially a financial asset giving future cash flows, and it will come to an end. When the asset matures, it will come to an end. So we can exactly ascertain the cash flows, future cash flows of financial instruments. Now, especially now we are talking about bonds. So a bond will have so many future cash flows. So if we know the present value of them, that is the price of the bond. So that is this calculation. So it's not very complex. You have to keep in mind the bond price is the amount of money which has amount of money which has the value as of today, right, derived from future cash flows, right? So now if we buy a bond today, we will know what are the future cash flows, right? We will know what are the future cash flows. So only thing we need to know the value today of those cash flows. We need to know the value of those cash flows as of today. So cash flows will be generated by this instrument in future, right? So by looking at that, using this method, this formula is based on, as I earlier said, the present value of money. Present value of money. That means we know that if we have money today, it's worth more than what we have tomorrow. Like the same amount. Say if we have 100 rupees today, it's more worth than 100 rupees tomorrow. So based on that theory, we calculate the bond pricing using this present value formula, right? So now in a bond, as I earlier also explained, we have future receivables in two ways. We have future receivables in two ways. Future coupons you have, and you have future maturity value. That is the maturity value. So this maturity value will be paid by the issuer at the maturity date, on the maturity date, right? So on the maturity date, you will be getting this maturity value and plus the last coupon. Apart from this, during the tenure of the bond, you will be getting future coupons, right? And I think here now in this formula, future value actually goes and fit into here. So we can write this formula in a different manner as well. You don't have to put here 1. You can say PV equals FV divided by 1 plus R into N, right? FV divided 1 plus R into N. Now if I right, okay. Now so you can write this as PV equals FV divided by 1 plus R into N. So we can put FV here. No need of having 1 here, but it won't make a difference, because the same thing. You can move FV to here if you want, right? So now there's some rate of return. Now say suppose if you have 100 rupees today, and if you invest it at 10 rupees, you will be getting 10%, you will be getting 110 at the end of the period, maybe 1 year, right? So likewise, now we have the future value. So we are bringing that future value to present by using a rate of return. So this rate of return is the expected rate of return, right? Depending on the market condition and depending on the market rates, or rather the rates in the market, people will expect, the investors will expect a return from an investment. So this return we call rate of return, and in a bond we call it yield to maturity. So this R is equal to yield to maturity. Why we call it yield to maturity? Because the definition is that to get this return, you have to keep this bond till it matures, right? So these are the present value. Now using the present value of the entire cash flows of this particular investment, we derive at the rate of return, or we can use rate of return, and we can calculate the value of the bond. So it's like this. Now this bond, you invest this present value, and at the end of the period you get the maturity amount, right? You get the maturity amount, that is the face value of the bond at the maturity. So, and during this period you are getting what? The coupon payments. You are getting coupon payments. So now the calculation here is we invest some money today, and at the rate of this YTM, you get this future value, and also the coupon payments, right? Only thing is, now we don't deal in the market for the price. Actual price is used to exchange these bonds, but basically this decision is based on the return you get. No, now if you want to know something, I mean, if you want to make an investment, you will first think of what? you will first think of how much as a percentage or as an amount, what is the return I am getting, and depending on the return, the price will change. Depending on that return, the price will change. And that now in a bond we call it yield to maturity. Because if we keep this bond until it matures, then the total return, if you take into consideration the total return, then only you can achieve this yield to maturity. If you sell it halfway through, then what will happen? Then you will not get this yield to maturity, because you are selling it now. And this calculation will not valid thereafter, because you are selling that halfway through, and then you won't be getting these future cash flows, right? You won't be getting these future cash flows. The bond market is like that. You buy and sell, and then you get capital gains as well. So the investors will take into consideration all these things. But here our task is to calculate what is the price. So now in our task, actually we have an assumption, or rather we have a theory here to say, if you keep this bond till its maturity, then what is the yield you will get? That is called yield to maturity, right? So you can call it yield even, right? No harm. But since there's a condition for this calculation, we call it yield to maturity. And the other factor we want to we want for this calculation is the time till maturity. Now in this formula, I explain you this N. How many number of periods this has until each cash flow, right? From today. Now, if we consider the value date as today, right, till maturity, you will be getting coupon payments as well as the maturity amount. But how many? What is the time period that you have to wait to get that cash flow, to get the next coupon, we will say, or next coupon plus at the end of the period the maturity amount. So you will be getting series of coupon payments plus the maturity amount, right? So what is the time period you have to wait to get those? Likewise, if you want to know the present value of these cash flows, you have to bring those cash flows from future to present. So bringing, in the sense, you have to calculate the value of the present. So for that calculation, you need to know how many number of periods that it is away from the present, or how many number of periods that it has to come from come from future to present. So it is really important to know the time periods, right? So now in this calculation, now I am explaining in a different perspective today. Now in this calculation, we actually take this cash flows which we are getting in every 6 months, right? Every 6 months. Now then we have to adjust these cash flows, that is the coupon payment, and now maturity value, you don't have to do anything, because you get that maturity value anyway at the end of the period, right? But coupons are calculated at the coupon rate. Coupons are calculated at the coupon rate, and that is annual coupon. So annual coupon, now since it's paid every 6 months or semi-annually, we take half of it, right? We take half of the annual coupon payment. So because we are getting that coupon payment from the central bank every 6 months. So now, in fact, if you calculate it, now you can calculate it in 2 ways. You can take half of the coupon rate and apply that to the face value, right? Half of the coupon rate and apply that to the face value and then do the calculation, right? Or else you can take the full coupon payment and then divide it by half. Either way, it's correct, because we are talking about equal coupon payments which are not dependent on the number of days, right? So since we are taking 6 months period, right, we have to adjust this R also for 6 months, because we here if we take the future value as 6 months, then you have to adjust this for 6 months as well. So we are considering 6 months periods. That is, every 6 months you get a cash flow. So we adjust this figure, or we divide this by 2 YTM to arrive at the 6 months yield, right? 6 months return. So, and then now in this formula you get how many time periods that it has to come from future. So now here we are considering 6 months period. Because we are considering 6 months period, we value one period as 1. That is n. N for one period, n for 6 months period is 1, right? N for 6 months period is 1. So we know how many n periods are there, right? So we will go to the calculation now. So I explain this time till maturity, and this is the sum we are trying to work out, and right. Okay. Now coupon interest calculation. Now we are doing it again. Coupon interest calculation. Now listen carefully. This is a semi-annual coupon bond, right? I explained while ago also. Payments are done twice a year on coupon dates. Payments are done twice a year on coupon dates, irrespective of number of days in the period, right? Irrespective of number of days in the period, equal coupons will be paid, right? So calculated on the face value. So it's very simple. Now this is very simple. On a bond, you calculate the coupon interest on its face value, right? So the face value is 50 million, right? So our coupon interest rate is 6.85%. 6.85%. Just calculate it and see if you have a calculator. Divide by 2. Why we divided by 2? Because now this 50 million and 6.85 is the annual interest rate. 6.85 is the annual interest rate. So, or the annual coupon interest rate, right? So we are talking about semi-annual coupon payment. So it will be exactly half of this for a 6 months period, right? So you can calculate and see 50 million into 6.85% divide by 2. 50 million into 6.85% divide by 2. It's 1,712,500, right? You can use the calculator, just small calculation. So you can use the calculator and see 6.85%. And this answer you divide by 2. Entire coupon is 3,425,000. You divide it by 2, you get 1,712,500. For a year you get 3,425,000, right? So half of it is 1,712,500. So this is the coupon interest. Why we need to calculate this coupon interest now? Because we need to know the cash flows in future. So we know now now in this bond there are 4 cash flows. Out of 4, 3 are only coupon payments. First 3 are only coupon payments, and the last one is coupon payment plus 50 million. 50 million is the face value of this bond. So last one would be 51,712,500. 51,712,500. That is this 50 million plus 1.712,500, right? So we will advance to the next slide. Now all in this bond, or now we calculated. We said now coupon will be paid 6 months period, and we take one period as 6 months period. So then 6 months period n is 1, right? So now we discussed that, but now these trades won't happen exactly on the coupon date, right? Now if we have a bond, like if a person has a bond, and if he wants to sell that bond, or if a person wants to buy a bond, that person won't wait until the coupon date, right? Because then you can't make your investments properly, or then and there when you get money, if you want to invest, you have to you should be able to invest, make an investment, or there should be a market which will capture your investment. Otherwise the money will be idling, and this market will be not very efficient, right? Not very efficient, and people won't be able to do their investments then and there and get the return. So the market has developed in a way, any day during this tenure of this instrument, any day during the tenure of the bond, a person can sell, or a person can buy, right? If the instrument is available in the market, a person can buy at any day. Or if I have an instrument, I can sell it at any time, right? I can sell it at any time. There's no restriction on that. So I don't have to wait until coupon date arrives, right? You can do it any time between issuance and maturity. So now what happens is, now if we do this trade exactly on the coupon date, then there won't be any issue, because already the person who is holding the bond has already got the coupon payment due for him for the period, for the last 6 months period. And today on the coupon date, now in this example, if we say if it was 15th April 2010, then on this day I am selling this bond, right? I am selling this bond to another person who is my purchaser, and I don't have to do anything. I have to calculate the price. I need to calculate the price, and then check with that purchaser's price, and if both prices agree, right, then we do the trade. So there's no accrued, or there's no interest portion due to me, because already today on 15/4/2010 I have got my interest for the last coupon period, for last 6 months. So there's no such interest payment that he has to pay me, because he is accumulating interest. or he will be entitled for the interest from 15th April to 15th October 2010, right? But in our example, it is not on the coupon date. It is on 9th August 2010 that we are going to do this trade, right? We are going to do this trade on 9th August 2010. I hope everyone understood up to now, because I haven't explained anything, anything difficult here. So if you have, however, if you have any question on this, because this is very, good to know area, and throughout, as I said earlier, also repeatedly, that it will be, it will be a really good thing for you to have this and know this, because everywhere you will be getting application of this formula, right? So just tell me if you have any questions. Just tell me, raise your hand and tell me, then I can, or you might on the mic, because I can't see you this raising hand sign here. So just on the mic and ask any questions up to this point, up to this calculation of number of days in current coupon period, right? Anyone has any issue? I need to get a feedback. Hello?
No issue from me, sir.
No issue, no? How about others?
No questions.
No questions from my end as well, sir.
Yeah, good. Others, if anyone has a question, then I am actually delighted because then I can, I can know that people who have questions also speak, right? So up to now, no issues, right? So just don't bother to disturb me and ask, right? So we are actually now trying to calculate number of days in current coupon period. Why we are doing this? Because we need this in our calculation. We need to use this in our calculation. So now we know 365 days per year as such, and also because due to different dates in months, different days in months, that you don't get exact number of days for every 6 months period, right? If I explain this in another way, say suppose if we have a bond issued on 1st of January, right? Issued on 1st of January. If we have a bond issued on 1st of January and it's maturing on the 1st of January later year, right? So this bond will have coupons on 1st of January and 1st of July, right? Understood? 1st of January and 1st of July. Say this year, we'll take this year as 2021. So 1st of January and 1st of July. So now coupon payments, first coupon will be paid on 1st of July. So the coupon interest will be calculated up to 30th June, right? 30th June. But only thing, now if we calculate the number of days, you have 31 days in January. Now this year 28 days in February, 31 days in March, 30 days in April, 31 days in May, and 30 days in June. So you get 181 days only, right? 181 days only. Because now for a year you get, now this year you get 365 days. Now here it's 181 days only, right? But if you take the other half, 31 July and 31 August, 30 September, 31 in October, plus 30 in November, plus 31 in December. So 184 days, right? So, but this is the norm in bond market. You pay equal coupons. So irrespective of the number of days, you pay equal coupons. So then why do we need this calculation here? We need this calculation here for calculation of accrued interest. To calculate accrued interest, right? I will explain again what is accrued interest then, right? Now, if we are doing these trades on exactly on the coupon dates, we won't, come across this accrued interest calculation, right? Then less work. But the only thing, it's not like that. Any day you can do the trade. So we need to know number of days, number of holding days of the seller. Then the interest up to that date is his interest, no? That he has to get that because he has been holding this bond up to that date. So now actually the day basis, they count those the norms, we would say, not rules really, will come into the picture. So we need to know how many days for this coupon period. Why we take this coupon period 15 for 2010 to 15/10/2010. Why did we take this period? Because the trade happened during this period, right? So other periods in future we are not bothered, because now this period, during this period only this trade happened. That was on 9th August 2010. On 9th August 2010, right? So we need to know what is the interest portion belongs to the seller, right? We need to know what is the interest portion belongs to the seller. So that interest portion the buyer has to pay. So that is why we need to know. So now this entire period has 183 days. This entire period has 183 days. So it's easier. We can calculate interest per day. We can calculate interest per day. Now, if you calculate interest per day, it would be 1,712,500 divided by what? Divided by 183. So per day interest is 9,357.92. 9,357.92. Everybody understood this? Because 1 day's interest is important, because we are going to calculate the interest for the holding period, right? So 1 day's interest is 9,357. So if I had this bond one day after the coupon, one day, like I buy this today, and if I had the bond just 1 day only, I am entitled for 9,357. So likewise, we are trying to calculate number of days till the settlement date from the last coupon. That is, so from the last coupon only the interest accumulates. No, from the last coupon only the interest accumulates. So so we need to know what is the amount, what is the accumulated amount. So that is called the accrued interest. Very easy. Now we will go to the next slide and see how this period number of days are arrived at. Now, as I earlier also mentioned, this is 16 days in April, right? Because we take 15 also into consideration. Why? Because it's starting from 15th, right? Starting from 15th. So 16th there, 31 days in May, 30 days in June, 31 days in July and August, up to 8th, because 9 after 9th, it's purchasers after 9th, it's the buyer's bond, buyer, the new buyer, right? So the seller will have the right of interest up to 8th of August. The seller will have right of interest up to 8th of August. So I just highlighted this to show you that I will omit 30 days in September and October 14 days because they are not, you know, they are not ours, they are not mine. If I am the holder of the bond, these interests are not mine, and also I'm entitled for 8 days interest in August, not more than that. 8 days interest in August. So when I calculate 16, when I add 16, 31, 30, 31, 8, right? Then the total number of days are 116, right? So total number of days are then 116. So now here the point here is, out of 183 days interest, the seller is entitled for 116 days interest, right? Because the seller was having this bond for 116 days. He was holding this bond for 116 days. So it is fair and legal, right, for him to claim for that interest, right? So there's no dispute in this market that with regard to this calculation, it is really easy, because you know number of days there. Everyone knows number of days per month, and everyone knows how to calculate number of days between a period. So this 116 days is not, you know, it's achievable by anyone. The seller, the buyer, if there's a broker, anyone can achieve this figure. So there's no dispute over this calculation. So it's 116 days. So now we calculate accrued interest. Now this part, 50 million into 6.85% divided by 2. This part is the coupon interest calculation, which we did while ago, right? This is the coupon interest. So now coupon interest is there. You want to know what is the interest for 116 days. So you divide it by 183, because this whole interest 1,712,500. This is only the current coupon period, right? We are taking into the current coupon period, because the others are future coupons. We are not bothered, because the seller is not anyway entitled for any future coupon payments, because he is selling it now. Only thing, this current coupon he is entitled for a portion of interest, right? Not the full thing, a portion of interest. What is that portion? It is easier from last coupon he had received to the settlement date. From the last coupon he had received and to the settlement date. So we multiply this by 116, or rather we want to take 1 per day interest. We divide it by 183 and multiply it by 116. So you get this figure, 1,085,519.12, right? Now this is exactly the figure you get, right? You also can calculate and see. So this is the accrued interest calculation. And this is 100% correct in terms of accounting. But I showed you another figure here, 1,085,500. I said this is the correct figure, right? So because in the bond market, there are certain norms that you have to put it into place to, you know, which helps us to, you know, arrive at figures which cannot be challenged by anyone. In the sense, everyone will apply the same norm, same scenario. Then you get you get the same amount, right? You get the same amounts. So here also it's actually this part I just put for your understanding only. Theoretically, the first one is 100% correct, right? But in the bond market, we apply a certain, decimal places in our calculation. So with those decimal places, you get a slightly a different figure, but this is actually accepted everywhere in any bond market. So this is the accepted way of doing this calculation. So anyway, in an examination question, if you put this in an examination question, if you put this answer, it's not wrong. It's you get the full marks for this. But this is for your understanding. I have given this part to you. So and I have shown you how we arrive at this, just to compare, just to do a comparison, because otherwise one can think, although we say that we use these theories to calculate these bond calculations, there can be certain other things coming into the picture, because we don't get the exact amounts as per the bond calculator or as per our systems. It's not that. It is the it is certain, certain practices we adopt here in taking decimal places, right? So decimal places like this. Now here the thing is, we do this calculation first. We do this fraction of the calculation first without taking into the face value. Without taking into the face value, we do this calculation first and get the answer. Then you get some decimal places, right? This is the fraction of your.
So let me explain now the something valuable for your assignment that I discussed today. The current products in the government securities market are treasury bills, treasury bonds, repurchase agreements, reverse repurchase agreements, Sri Lanka development bonds, international sovereign bonds, and I think yes, that is it. Then they are priced at LIBOR or whatever the benchmark rate, and in the case of rupee deposits, the main benchmark rate is 3-month treasury bills or 1-year treasury bills that are taken. So in the case of SLDBs and ISBs, as you all know, the Sri Lanka credit rating is in CCC grade, and then therefore the government had to pay a thumping premium over the LIBOR rate. So that can be one factor that can be brought into your assignment. And then also please consider about the directions by the Monetary Board, starting from the Central Bank, starting from the Banking Act, and then I've given you some hints here. Then the financial institution, when they buy into the or invest in treasury bills and treasury bonds, they are required to segregate their portfolios into investment accounts and trading account. I think you must be very well aware of this. And then at the time of purchasing or investing in a treasury bill or government security, you are expected to decide whether it is for investment or trading purposes, and then accordingly the back office will pass entries and book into the computer, book into the books of the bank, or the whether to go to investment account or a trading account. And there are accountancy principles, guidelines, and then central bank directives that no one can switch between investment account and trading account and investment, just to prevent when one investment is bought, and then when when there is no opportunity for them to sell at a profit, some people used to pass it into trading, investment made in trading account. When there is no profit available for them to sell, they pass it on to investment account and wait until for some time. So that to prevent that, the switch between the trading and investment account is restricted. That decision has to come, if at all, at a very senior level to be decided by the ALCO or the board of directors to switch between the investment account and trading account. And financial institutions are required to maintain 2 separate books of accounts for these purposes. And then also they are expected to be marked to market on a daily basis. And especially on the trading account, the mark to market has to happen. And then whether it's a trading profit or a loss, it has to be booked into the P&L account. And there are separate guidelines for the investment account gains and losses to be treated, but still they has to be recognized in the P&L account. Investment account for all securities acquired with the positive intent and ability to hold it till maturity shall be classified under the investment account. But then on the trading account, all securities acquired for the specific purpose of trading on a regular basis to take advantage of the short-term changes in the market prices and yields shall be classified under the trading account. And in some banks and financial institutions, I know when they buy into a trading account, there is a specific time period that they can hold on. And if they cannot get a decent profit margin and then exit, they anyway have to exit at the end of the expiry of the time gap. So likewise, there are some controls for the investment interest of the accounts. So that this type of professional practice or market best practices also will increase the confidence by the investors, and then there will be more trades, more transactions in the market. Did Mr. Karnatha come back?
Yeah, Mr.
Right. Okay. Over to you.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much. Sorry for it. My computer got stuck.
That's
and
okay.
I had to reboot from the beginning. Right. Okay. So we were doing. We were, discussing here now. So what we do here is we make it a point to take this, answer to 6 decimal places and multiply it by 50 million. So that is how we arrive at 1,085,000. This is why I explained this is.
Sorry, you have to present the PowerPoint presentation.
Sorry. Now you can see, no?
Yes, sir.
Now, right, okay, thank you. Right, okay. Now,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I was explaining here. So accrued interest, now you get to, now we get this answer from the calculation, and I have just put this figure to show you this is the figure you will get in the bond calculator, because there are certain, practices and norms put into this calculation to, arrive at this figure. So that is coming from the practice, as well as, certain, basis is there. So the basis here is if you want to do it manually, then you take this part first and then get this answer and take it up to 6 decimals. Just take it up to 6 decimals and multiply this by 50 million. Then you get this exactly what you get from the bond calculator. So this is not really necessary to know for a person who is not in this market, right? If you are doing this exactly, if you are doing only for the for an exam, then this is enough. This is enough. Why I am explaining this is you can you can calculate your day-to-day things and day-to-day trades, and then do it from this calculator, bond calculator, and get the figure and do it manually and see whether you can match these two. So that is why I am just teaching you this. Then it will be interesting to see that you get the same figure as the system figure or the bond calculator figure, right? So we now here, as we have been discussing this over last 3 days, the buyer will pay the accrued interest to the seller. Why? Seller is entitled for that. Seller is entitled for the accrued interest part, right? So in a bond, I will discuss this clean price and dirty price here. In a bond, say now if a bond is traded on exactly on the coupon date, then there won't be accrued interest, right? Then when there's no accrued interest, there's no dirty price as such. So it's traded on the clean price. Or clean price, you can't say clean price is equal to dirty price, because dirty price is a different concept. Because dirty price, you arrive at clean price plus accrued interest. So if the trade is done on a coupon date, the bond will be traded for the clean price. But now here, since we have the accrued interest, clean price plus accrued interest, the buyer will pay to the seller. Right? So that is the total purchase consideration. So still we haven't calculated the price, right? We just calculated the accrued interest portion. But this is how the purchase consideration is calculated. You calculate the clean price plus the accrued interest, the dirty price. But in our calculation, we straight away get the dirty price, right? I will explain that part later on, but now I will go to the calculation and explain how do we do this calculation, right? So now this is already we have discussed, nothing in that, like bond price is the amount of the money investors are willing to pay for acquiring the bond. Bonds are traded for the yield. It gives to the holder the calculated price based on the yield. So it gives the holder at the calculated price based on the yield. So that this yield actually. We go to the next slide. This method. Now we are using net present value for pricing bonds. Now I hope you all now understand what is the present value concept, right? Or what is the net present value. Now when we say present value and net present value, same thing, but only thing when there are so many cash flows, you can calculate present value of those cash flows and add them and arrive at the net present value. That is the total of it, right? So hope you understand that, and you can, I think you will remember this formula, PV equals FV. Now I will, I am telling it in a different way now, because this one you can, I said this one you can take off. One in this formula here you get one, no? So you don't have to use one. You can say PV equals FV divided by 1 plus R into N. 1 plus R into N. It is very easy to remember. Present value equals future value divided by 1 plus R into N. 1 plus R into N, right? So we use this calculation to get the cash flows present value of cash flows of the bond, or present value of all future cash flows of the bond. So that is the price. That is the price. Only thing, when we quote the price, right? When we quote the price, we quote the price for 100 units. 100 units of the bond, right? 100 units. So that is, that is another practice in the market. Usually, then it's easier, no? If you quote the price for 100 units, then whatever the 100 units of face value, right? 100 units of face value. So whatever the face value, right, in rupees, you can calculate it easily. So that is why we have bond prices around 100, right? Around 100. Why I say around 100? Those some are less than 100, some are more than 100. So around 100, you get these bond prices because they are quoted for 100 units, right? 100 units of that particular bond. So, so we will apply the formula to, the details to the formula, or rather the feature, the bond. This particular bond has face value, coupon rate, yield to maturity, and we can calculate the number of coupon periods ahead, right? So we are trying to put our values in this formula. Our values in the sense the values we have in this coupon, right? In this bond. So this bond has 50 million value, face value, right? And issue date is 15/4/2006. Maturity date is 15/4/2012. Coupon interest rate is 6.85. Now, coupon interest rate is the interest rate at which you calculate the coupon. Now, this will not change. This will not change from the issue date to the maturity date. Every 6 months, the central bank will be paying coupons at 6.85% based on the face value, calculated on the face value. So every 6 months you will be getting, now we calculated this coupon, it is 1,712,500, right? So irrespective of the market condition or market interest rate, you will be getting this percentage, interest percentage every 6 months. Now market interest rates can go up, right? Market interest rates can go up to 10%, 8%, or whatever it is, or it can come down to 4%, 5%. But coupon interest will be paid at 6.85 on the face value. So this cash flow is a constant cash flow. There won't be a change in this cash flow, right? There won't be a change in this cash flow. This is a future cash flow attached to this investment, or attached to this financial asset, which is a bond, right? Which is a bond. And what is yield to maturity? Now, yield to maturity, I explained a while ago, it is the return the investor will be getting if he keeps this until the maturity. So this 8.7% is actually his return. It's not 6.85. Now, when I say you get 6.85 and actual return is 8.7, now it can make a little bit of confusion, right? So in money wise, you get 6.85%. But this investor, depending on the market, we will say at that time, this kind of an instrument, which has a maturity value of say 50 million and maturing in 3 years and some days, right? Maturing in 1.5 years and few months, right? Why I say so? Now we are trading this on 98/2010. So it is less than 2 years. It's less than 2 years. You get 1 6 months period, 1 6 months period, 1 6 months period here. So 3 6 months periods plus some days, right? So at that time, if the market rate of a similar instrument or market rate which the market is expecting to have as return is 8.7%. That is it. Now you call it no. Now this bond is giving 6.85, but we are not bothered about that, right? We need, certainly we need that for the calculation, but I don't want 6.85 because market rates have gone up now. So I need at least 8.7%, right? 8.7% from this bond. Now forget about all these calculation, right? Forget about all these calculation. Now I can invest my money, right? Now think. Now you can invest your money in the market, right? At 8.70. At 8.70. That is the accepted interest rate in the market right now for this kind of an instrument, right? So 8.75. Now you want to buy, right? But now the market is like that. No, you have to go and invest in a product which is available in the market, right? So this bond is available in the market for sale, or rather to purchase for you, right? For you to purchase. So this, but only thing, this instrument gives you 6.85% only. This instrument gives you 6.85% only, and this buyer says, I want 50 million. Sorry, the seller says, I want 50 million. You are the buyer. You are the buyer. And you are the buyer, and you want to invest your money at 8.70, right? 8.70. You want to invest your money at 8.70. But this one will give 6.85, right? Okay, we will just calculate and see. 50 million, right? A minute. 50 million, you also can calculate and see 50 million at 8.70%, right? Then it is divided by 2. Then it is 2,175,000. 2,175,000. But this will give me only 1,712,500 as the coupon, right? So will I pay, if I want to buy this one, will I pay 50 million? Can anyone answer? Will I pay 50 million for this? Now, if I invest in the market 50 million, I can get 8.70 on that. But if I pay and buy this 50 million bond, I will be getting 6.85% only, right? So, will anyone pay 50 million for this, right? Will anyone pay 50 million for this bond? What do you think? What do you think? Can anyone answer? Now, this gives only 6.85. I need 8.70, right? I need 8.70. This gives only 6.85. Just forget about the formula and everything, right? Now, its guaranteed rate is 6.85, but I need 8.70. Will I pay 50 million and buy this bond? Can anyone tell me? Hello?
No, sir. No, sir.
No. Yeah. No. Why? Why?
Yes,
You
okay.
can put your 50 million for 8.7, no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So no need of, getting a rate much lesser than the market rate, no? So now by looking at this, we can say the price of this bond is less than 50 million, right? Price of this bond is less than 50 million. I am just, just adding something to yesterday's explanation, for you to think, right? Then now by looking at this, I can say the price would be for 100 units would be less than 100, right? It's so that way you have to, that way you have to train your mind, because then it is easy. As soon as you see this, you know what will happen, right? So so it is, so I will say, okay, look here, I can't give you 50 million for this because this gives me 6.85% only. But market, there are instruments available for 8.7. So I will pay you 49 million, right? He will say, I will pay you 49 million. The buyer will tell. So seller will say, no, 49 million is not enough. I want 49.5, right? So something like that. Now, I told you earlier also, in financial instruments, you don't have to, negotiate like that, right? If both seller and the buyer decides on the yield to maturity, right? Yield to maturity, then what happens? Then you can do the calculation. You can do a calculation and arrive at the figure. You don't have to, negotiate like, in the vehicle market or in some other market. Vehicle market, if you go, they will say it's the tires are also new now. Yesterday only I put the tires, so you have to, like that. They will, try to negotiate. But here, no negotiations. Only negotiation is for the yield to maturity. So if they accept that I need this yield to maturity, if the buyer says I need this 8.70 yield to maturity, and if the seller agrees, right, then they will calculate the price and do the trade. That is why I said the bonds are traded on the yield, right? Not on the price. They are traded on the yield. But when you say traded on the yield, how to trade? You need to find the price. So that is why we are calculating the price, right? So I think our time is up, no? 6:35.
Yes, Mangala, I think this is a good point to stop for today.
Yes.
And then we will continue on next Tuesday, 11th.
Yeah, next Tuesday. Yeah. So please go through, everyone, please go through this and come. Even if you want to go further into this calculation, you can go through this and come. As I told yesterday, we are trying to, I am doing, although we are online, we will do a sum together, right? We will do a sum together. If you can bring a calculator which has into the power function only, you don't need very complex calculator, into the power function only. And sometimes now this phone, if you take the phone, you have the calculator, no? So if you turn it this way, right, you get that function, you get that scientific functions also. You must be familiar with this. I'm just telling you for the benefit of all. So even the phone calculator is enough for this calculation, right? So we will get ready for calculation. Then you can, really get into it. So thank you so much for listening to me. Sorry for the halfway through interruption because of this computer got stuck.
Thank you, Mangala. Thank you.
Anyway, today is not Friday, but have a nice weekend. I was thinking why Fridays are not chosen for this. Then I remembered Fridays we just
thank you, Mangala. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.